In this lesson, we will introduce the big ideas in knowledge construction. When we are designing learning activities for knowledge construction, we need to determine if students are required to construct and apply knowledge, and if that knowledge is interdisciplinary. Knowledge construction activities require students to generate ideas and understandings that are new to them. Students can do this through interpretation, analysis, synthesis, or evaluation. In stronger activities, knowledge construction is the main requirement of the learning activity. The strongest activities require students to apply the knowledge they have constructed in a different context, helping them to deepen their understanding further and to connect information and ideas from two or more academic disciplines. For example, integrating learning from both science and literature. Knowledge construction happens when students do more than reproduce what they have learned. They go beyond knowledge reproduction to generate ideas and understandings that are new to them. The skills of knowledge construction are often considered critical thinking. Activities that require knowledge construction ask students to interpret, analyse, synthesize, or evaluate information or ideas. The skills of knowledge construction are often considered critical thinking. Activities that require knowledge construction require students to interpret, analyse, synthesize, or evaluate information or ideas. Interpretation means drawing inferences beyond the literal meaning. For example, students might read a description of a historical period and infer why people who lived then behaved the way they did. Analysis means identifying the parts of a whole and their relationships to each other. For example, students might investigate local environmental factors to determine which are most likely to affect migrating birds. Synthesis means identifying the relationships between two or more ideas. For example, students might be required to compare and contrast perspectives from multiple sources. Evaluation means judging the quality, credibility, or importance of data, ideas, or events. For example, students might read different accounts of a historical event and determine which ones they find the most credible. If an activity asks students to practice a procedure they already know, or if the activity gives students a set of steps to follow, the activity does not require knowledge construction. To determine whether students already know a certain procedure, consider what is typically expected of students of their age. If an activity asks students to devise a procedure themselves, the activity does require knowledge construction. It is important to note that not all student activities that are commonly described as research involve knowledge construction. If students are asked to look up information and then write a paper that simply describes what they found, students are reproducing knowledge, but they are not constructing knowledge. They have not been asked to interpret, analyse, synthesize, or evaluate anything. When planning for knowledge construction, you need to consider the following. Does the activity require knowledge construction? Is the main requirement knowledge construction? Are students required to apply their knowledge in a new context? And is the learning activity interdisciplinary? Think about these situations and consider if knowledge construction is taking place. Students use details in a story to infer the reasons why a character committed a crime. Is there knowledge construction when students write a paper describing the crime a character committed? Is there knowledge construction when students use Bing to search the internet for information about local activities to help the environment and analyse it to decide what else could be done? Is there knowledge construction when students use Bing to search the internet for information about local activities to help the environment and give a presentation to describe what they found? Is there knowledge construction when students write a paper that compares and contrasts information from multiple sources? Is there knowledge construction when students write a paper that describes information they found online or in books? Is there knowledge construction when students compare different explanations for changes in atmospheric pressure to determine which explanations are credible? Is there knowledge construction when students who have not learned about parallel lines examine several different pairs of lines to try to develop a definition of parallel? Is there knowledge construction when students who have already been taught the definition of parallel Use the definition to decide whether several sets of lines are parallel. The main requirement is the part of the activity that students spend the most time and effort on, and the part that educators focus on when grading. If the learning activity does not specify how much time students should spend on each part, you may have to use your professional judgment to estimate how long students are likely to spend on different tasks. Now think about the following situations to determine if knowledge construction is the main requirement of the learning activity. Students spend 10 minutes listing details from a story, then spend 35 minutes using the details to propose why a character committed a crime. Now consider if knowledge construction is the main requirement, where students spend 35 minutes listing details from a story, then in the last 10 minutes of class, they use the details to infer why a character committed a crime. Is knowledge construction the main requirement, where students earn 30% of their grade for finding information and 70% for analysing what they find? Is knowledge construction the main requirement, where students earn 70% of their grade for finding information and 30% for analysing what they find? Now, what we would like you to consider is how you could redesign this learning activity so that knowledge construction is the main requirement. Students must apply their knowledge when they use the knowledge they have constructed to support another knowledge construction task in a new context. For example, students in a physics class might construct knowledge about heat principles from a study of the Earth's inner core and then apply what they learned to investigate the environment of Jupiter. Or, students in a language class might write a persuasive essay for an academic audience and then apply the knowledge they constructed about audience-focused writing to reposition the same content for a public newspaper article. In each case, the second knowledge construction task deepens students' understanding of core principles because they must abstract what they learned and look at it from a different perspective in order to apply it in a different situation. To be considered an application of knowledge in a new context, it is not enough for the two contexts to differ only in surface features. Students cannot respond to the new situation simply by applying the same formula. Students must use interpretation, analysis, synthesis, or evaluation to decide how to use what they have learned in this new context. Please think about the following learning scenarios and consider if in each case the students are required to apply their knowledge. Students analyse demographic statistics from their hometown and then use their understanding of population trends to develop a plan for an upcoming housing development project. Are students required to apply their knowledge in this activity? Students analyse demographic statistics from their hometown and then analyse demographic statistics from a second location of their choice. Are students required to apply their knowledge in this activity? Students examine photos enlarged at different sizes to develop an understanding of similarity and then apply that knowledge to abstract geometric shapes, thinking about size ratios and angles to determine which shapes are mathematically similar. Are students required to apply their knowledge in this activity? Students examined photos enlarged at different sizes to develop an understanding of similarity and then describe their understanding. Are students required to apply their knowledge in this activity? Students in theatre class analyse the characters in a play to learn about character development. Then the students use Movie Maker to create their own one-act play demonstrating character development. Do students apply their knowledge in this activity? Students in theatre class analyse the characters in a play to learn about character development and then write an essay about what they learnt. Are students required to apply their knowledge in this activity? Students design and execute a procedure for testing the qualities of the tap water in their school. Once they have accurate data, they use that information to determine which water filtration system would be most appropriate for the school. Are students required to apply their knowledge in this activity? Students design and execute a procedure for testing the qualities of the tap water at their school. They test the water and redesign the procedure iteratively until they have accurate data. If we go back to the learning activity, where students design and execute a procedure for testing the qualities of the tap water at their school, They test the water and redesign the procedure iteratively until they have accurate data. Although students applied their knowledge from previous trials to refine the procedure, they're only applying knowledge within a single repeated context. They are deepening their knowledge, but they're not extending it to a new type of application. Now what we would like you to consider is how you could redesign this learning activity so that students are required to apply their knowledge. We would encourage you to go to the discussion section to share your views and ideas about this task redesign with others. Interdisciplinary learning activities have learning goals that involve content, important ideas, or methods from different academic subjects, such as mathematics and music, or language arts and history. Subjects that are typically taught together in your country do not count as interdisciplinary. For the purposes of this rubric, ICT is not considered a separate academic subject. ICT is often used as a tool for learning in other subjects. For example, students might build ICT skills when they do online research for a history project. This activity is not considered interdisciplinary. Is this an interdisciplinary activity? Students in science class write persuasive letters to an environmental organisation about the results of their experiment. Educators grade students on the quality of their data and on their writing skills. Is this an interdisciplinary activity? Students in science class write persuasive letters to an environmental organisation about the results of their experiment. Educators grade students only on the quality of their data. Is this an interdisciplinary activity? Students in science class plot points on a graph. Learning goals for both math and science are defined. Is it an interdisciplinary activity where students in science class plot points on a graph and no learning goals for math are defined? Is it an interdisciplinary activity where students in physics use ICT to present their work to the class? Let's go back to the learning activity where students in science class write persuasive letters to an environmental organisation about the results of their experiment, and in which educators grade students only on the quality of their data. We decided that this activity was not interdisciplinary, as educators only graded the science aspect of the lesson. What we would like you to consider now is how you could redesign this learning activity so that students' work is interdisciplinary. We would encourage you to go to the discussion section to share your views and ideas about this task redesign with others. In this lesson, we have discussed some of the big ideas about knowledge construction and what it could look like in the classroom. In the next lesson, we will examine the knowledge construction rubric.